With only hours left before the election, the Biden-Harris ticket has decided to go all in on Marxism. That's their closing pitch, their closing argument. The thing they want voters thinking about as they head to the polls on Tuesday is this. Of course, Biden-Harris has always been all in on Marxism, as has the whole Democrat Party for years now. But what I'm going to play for you now is perhaps the most direct and explicit endorsement of that ideology that we've heard from any major Democrat who's not named Bernie Sanders. So here's the video put out by Kamala Harris on Sunday. Listen to this.
So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests, oh, everyone should get the same amount. The problem with that, not everybody's starting out from the same place. So if we're all getting the same amount, but you started out back there and I started out over here, we can get the same amount, but you're still gonna be that far back behind me. It's about giving people the resources and the support they need so that everyone can be on equal footing and then compete on equal footing. Equitable treatment means we all end up at the same place.
Okay, a lot of problems here. Let's start with the slightly less significant one, which is what was up with the background noise here? Was that like running water? It sounded like a running water sound effect, like a stream or something. Were we supposed to imagine Kamala sitting by a stream on a mountainside, imparting these teachings to her disciples? Is that the vibe they were going for? Because it doesn't quite work. She definitely doesn't have the soothing voice necessary to be a mountaintop guru. In fact, the voice and the message would be much more at home in a gender studies class, maybe a workplace tolerance and diversity seminar or something like that. So that didn't really work. But more to the point, Harris says that equality is giving people the same amount. But that's not good enough, she says, because some people are starting out ahead. And so when they get the same amount, they're going to still be ahead of those who started out behind them. So what we need, she says, is equity, which means we all start at the same place and end at the same place. And I think that basically summarizes her argument fairly, I think. Now, let's run through all the reasons why this is a horrifying combination of stupid, incoherent, dishonest, and dangerous. Number one, equality does not mean that we all get the same amount. That's not what equality is, legally or in any other sense. Equality under the law, which is the only kind of equality that the government should be concerned with, means that we're all subject to the same laws and that the law does not explicitly give advantages or disadvantages to anybody. Which means, for example, affirmative action, those laws infringe on equality under the law. They are a direct assault on equality under the law by design. But that's what equality under the law is supposed to mean. And that's what we should have in this country, though we don't. Equality as it relates to human beings and societies more generally, though, doesn't and cannot exist in any other form. Human beings are not in any measurable or quantifiable sense actually equal. We should be treated equal under the law, but as far as what and who we actually are, there's no equality there. Equality means sameness. I'm not the same as anyone else on earth. I have a different personality, background, experience. I'm either going to be dumber, smarter, more hardworking, less hardworking, more virtuous, less virtuous than the next guy. None of us are equal. The type of equity Harris talks about assumes that we are all equal. We're all the same. It doesn't account for any differences in personality, character, intelligence, priority, virtue. It just assumes that we're all at heart exactly the same. And crucially, that we're all trying to go to the same place. In her vision of the world, everybody wants to climb to the same mountaintop, to the same elevation, and the same exact destination. She can't understand that everyone has their own mountaintops, and not everyone is trying to get to the top, or people have a different idea of what the top is for them. And this confusion comes up quite a bit, I think, especially with discussions of the wage gap. The wage gap is mostly a myth, of course, but whatever wage disparity does exist between genders, it's because women and men make different choices in their careers. They have different priorities. Women, for example, are more likely to choose jobs that give them more time at home. They're more likely to leave the workforce entirely to raise children. Harris sees this as a problem of equity. What she can't understand is that lots of women make that choice because that's the kind of life they want to live. That's their priority, their vision, their desire, their mountaintop. It's not the same as everybody else. Number two, what does she mean by get the same amount? Same amount of what? And who is giving it? This isn't being pedantic here. It's a serious question. I honestly have no idea what this thing is that we're all getting and who's giving it. What does she mean? Money, skill, IQ points? What are we talking about here? But of course, the vagueness is the point. Harris could just shout, "We should all get the same amount." And undiscerning listeners will cheer, "Yes, sounds great, the same amount." Without anybody stopping to ask, wait a second, same amount of what? Number three, bringing us to the most terrifying part of the clip, I think. She says, equitable treatment means we all end up at the same place. This is what's known as equality of outcome. Equality of opportunity is usually what politicians talk about, even though that phrase and that concept is also vague and impossible to achieve or even to define. But that's one thing. Equality of outcome is another thing entirely. Equality of opportunity, in theory, means that you clear the path and let people walk as far down it as they want. Equality of outcome means you set booby traps on the path to stop some people from walking too far down it, and then you take other people and you carry them further along it so that at the end, we're all bunched up, some of us bruised and bleeding, on the same spot on the same path. And who chooses what that spot should be? Who decides what our universal outcome ought to be? Who decides where we should all end up? Well, the government, of course, Kamala Harris. She'll be happy to decide. And as the decider, that means that she is not herself in the same place. She's further along. She has power. So everyone else should end up in the same place, but not her. She needs to be further along so that she can turn around and decide where the rest of us are allowed to go, how far we're allowed to go. So this is full-blown Marxism. And to understand how disturbed you should be by it, just imagine what would be required for the government to ensure that 330 million people all end up in the same place. Well, you don't have to imagine. Look elsewhere in the world and throughout history where this experiment has been tried. You will find tyranny and death, because tyranny and death these are a necessary mechanism, a vehicle for what Kamala Harris is talking about. You cannot create equality of outcome without removing self-determination, freedom, liberty, creativity, everything else that makes humans human and life worth living. See, the thing is, governments really cannot force people to be more successful than their desire, ambition, and skill level will take them. Government cannot create equity through positive enforcement. The only way it can do it is to do the one thing governments can do, which is punish, censor, stifle, kill. Governments cannot force people to be successful. They can, though, steal the fruits of success from the successful and chop them back down to size. This is within the logistical capabilities of the government, even if it's not within its moral or constitutional limits. So that's what this equity will mean. That's what it always means. Punishment and suppression. That's the future the Democrats envision. Now voters have to decide if it's what they want as well. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.